Getting started on this Jason Voorhees, using this 5-round liner to start blocking in this boot down below. Be working my way up, using 3 caps of ink. I'll be using 1 full of solid black, 1 half full, and then 1 with 3 drops of black, and the rest diluted down with distilled water. Getting into this piece, we'll be going over mostly smooth black and gray shading, building up our tones, getting those real nice smooth and silky transitions and blends. So you notice I'm not moving fast at all. There's a lot of detail down in this boot, so I'm just getting things blocked in with that liner. Once I get out of the boot, I'll be moving, to start off, I'll be moving to a 9 curved mag. Throughout this project, I'll also be using an 11 curved mag and a 15 curved mag. All from Bishop. Be running at 8 volts this whole project. Since I'm wanting to achieve really smooth tones, I'm going to keep my hands moving in specific motion and at a consistent speed throughout the entire piece. You'll see I'll be changing the angle of the mag and how I'm working throughout the project. That'll help me to achieve more of those solid, smooth tones that I'm looking for. Just chipping away here at the detail on this boot. Again, using a 5-round liner at this point. It's a really cool leg sleeve. We have a Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis on the other side of the leg. Be sure to check that video out as well. Now I'm getting into some of those laces. Right now I'm using my medium wash just to block in areas. Once I have the whole stencil on the skin, then I'll come back and make contrast adjustments, pushing into my lighter tones or adding my blacks to darken things up a bit. It's a really small detail, but the shine on the front of this boot is really cool. I love the way that the light reacts there. So that's something I spend a lot of time trying to capture. Even though this area, this part of the tattoo, is technically more in the distance, so it's not going to be as highly detailed as the rest, I definitely want the eye to be drawn to that area. I think when you're doing realism and you pick out little spots like that, whether in a single piece or throughout a larger project where you want to draw that eye, I think that's really cool. It can help you move the viewer through the piece to see other parts of the design that you want them to see. and lead them through the leg, telling a story with a little bit more of a flow and cohesiveness rather than just multiple designs thrown together. Using dynamic black again on this piece. It's generally my go-to for most projects, along with the needle groupings that I mentioned. Get in that underside of the boot here, and you can see the leg kind of overlaps a little bit on that corner. So I'm really just getting that little bit of a cast shadow there. There's a lot going on in this piece, so like I said, it is important to pick those areas that you want to be more visually impactful and where you want to draw the eye. Otherwise, it could be a little overwhelming, and those areas that you really want to shine might end up falling flat in the grand scheme of things. Real consistent pendulum motion here. Although I'm working with that liner, again, you'll hear me say it all the time, I'm not using it like a liner. Using it more how you would a round shader, being very cautious, just kind of feathering it over the top of the skin. I love the way that this piece fit the leg as well. It wraps around, leading towards the back of the calf. The way that Jason's glove comes back there, it leads you to the other side of the leg perfectly. We'll be adding some more of that chain that's around his neck on in the future as well, to help give us a little bit more flow and to lead us towards the bottom of the leg. Again, those visual cues and directions are really important when it comes to large scale work. You don't want these pieces to just be flat and standing alone on this person's leg or their arm, whatever it is. You want it to have a flow and a cohesiveness that helps bring these images together. Although we'll be using images and characters from several different movies, it's important that they interact and react with each other in a certain way that's visually appealing and helps us to tell that story. Moving on to the pants now. This lower leg. Just getting some of those folds in there, right where it wraps around his boot. And taking my time. Real smooth and consistent motions. Really focused on smooth grays here in this piece. Much easier to take our time and get the results that we want rather than rush and not be happy with the end result. Being real light and feathery like this on top of the skin also allows you to work a little bit more. It gives you a few more options Whereas if you were packing it in super solid on the first pass, but you've got to be very careful when doing that. You've got to be able to pay attention to the skin, how their skin's reacting, how the ink is going in. It's really just something that you pick up by continually doing it. But there'll be visual cues as well. If things are getting real swollen and red and inflamed, if those pores are starting to open up, you probably don't want to be layering too much over that area. It's like with all of tattooing, you just need to be very mindful about what you're doing. Pay attention to the process, not only what you're doing, but also how the skin is reacting. I'm also not running my machine really high either. Like I said, I'm staying around 8 to 8.5. Not really fluctuating too much there. Generally, for most of my black and gray, that's about what I stay at. Sometimes I will go a little bit lower than that, but not very often. But you definitely couldn't tattoo the way that I do running at 10 or 12 volts. So it's just something to be really cautious and mindful about when you're tattooing this way. If you watch these videos, you'll hear me explain it all the time. I'm almost like with someone with a feather. I'm just trying to tickle the person, get them to react a little bit, but I don't want to wake them up. So I'm not burying these needles in. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the skin. Just being real light, real feathery on top, and letting the machine do most of the work. Now that I've got some of the stuff in the pant leg done, I'm seeing a couple areas here in the boot that I want to adjust just a little bit. That's an important thing about our shading and contrast as well. Once you have other tones around it, whether they be skin tones or solid blacks, it's going to kind of inform our eye a little bit more of any adjustments that we need to make there. So that's something to be mindful and pay attention to as well throughout the process. Especially if you're like me, I'll pick a reference that I really like, but a lot of times I'm adjusting that lighting slightly just to make it a little bit more visually appealing. Or where I want to draw that eye and that interest to in that specific piece or part of the piece. Now I'm coming in with this 9 mag. You'll see me using almost every single edge of it, from flat to on its side, depending on where we're working. I'll also be changing the angle in an almost cross-hatch type way to achieve certain saturation in areas, or as I'm layering, just to make things a little bit darker, or any little adjustments. Again, working in a real consistent motion. The motion will change slightly depending on the needle configuration and in the size of the area that I'm working. Right now I'm working up beside that chain, coming up towards this jacket. Getting real smooth and consistent motions. That's what we're focused on here, is smooth grays, nice buttery transitions from one tone to the next. So just want to take our time, not in any kind of rush here. You can see already the way that the leg's taking shape and the way that that shading is bringing form to it, and the tones and the way that they're sitting, already pushing that boot almost to the background, which is exactly what we want. Biggest way to do things like that and to create effects like that is our understanding of those shapes and forms and our understanding of how the lighting works, especially when we're making adjustments on the fly and along the way. And I'm just shading off that edge now. There's going to be little folds and little creases in this fabric, these pants, and in this jacket. So that's something that I really want to capture as well. I don't need to get every little fold and every little indication, but I do want to take advantage of some of those and capture them. Make things a lot more interesting, add more form and value. Here it almost looks like I'm doing a pendulum motion, but I'm primarily only putting ink in as I'm moving backwards. I can still get that same consistency as a pendulum motion, but I can have a little bit more pressure or control over the pressure and how the needles are going into the skin. So that's a technique I'll use quite often. You'll see I'm doing that here, coming off of some of those blends off the edge of the jacket. That backstroke gives you a whole lot of control over your blends and how much ink is actually going into the skin. Building up some of those folds here in the pants. Really starting to take shape. And still working with this 9 curved mag. Although the curved mag doesn't have that flat edge that a regular mag would, I think they're a lot more versatile. With a flat mag, you have a tendency to almost stab the skin on the sides, which you can accidentally go too dark or put in too much too much ink into an area when you're trying to do smooth, consistent tones and blends. So I prefer the curved mags. You'll notice for most projects I'm almost always using a 9 curved mag and an 11 curved mag. Those are two of my favorites. Small details and textures, sometimes I'll use a 7 or even a 5. I find those are great for building up any kind of textures, furs, stone textures, wood. You can use some of those smaller mags as a liner very efficiently too. But again, you got to be very careful using them that way. It's all about being mindful and paying attention to the skin and how you're working. Here I've moved into his glove. Love the way that the hands are reaching forward, almost out towards you, towards the viewer. Especially this one, coming towards the back of the calf, leading you around to the other side. Just slowly building up these tones. You'll see me switching from that pendulum to that backstroke again. I definitely utilize that technique a lot. Building up some tone around the edge of these gloves so we can block those in. Push those gloves to the front, just like the way that we push the boot to the back. Again, paying attention to our light and our form and how everything is reacting and working together. Got that mag on its side now. Using that to block in the edges of that glove, coming around and building up the form of it. I'm still mostly using that medium gray tone right now, which would be my half cup of black, diluted the rest of the way down with distilled water. Use that tone most of the time as I'm blocking things in and building up those basic tones and shapes. And I'll come back and refine, push off of those with my lighter tones, and then build up my solid blacks and my darks off of the mediums as well. See, I'm using that mag in pretty much any way you can. Doing a little bit of a pendulum motion. Doing some backstrokes. Even there in the corner, I'm kind of coming down into an almost shovel or circular motion. Working in this fold of the cloth here. This is where the seam of the jacket would be, around the shoulder area, and some of those folds and creases around there. Mag back on its side. Getting those edges dialed in. That's why I love a mag. They're so versatile. You can go from lining, you can do full solid shades, smooth grays, smooth tones and blends. Almost always use my mags before I will a liner, and then come back and dial things in with the mag or the liner. I just feel it gives me a lot more control over the end result, and again, where I really want that to bring that focus to in the image. Whereas if I was to line everything out, I'm kind of locked in as to where my focus is at. Yeah, I can do varied line weights and things like that, but this way I can make certain areas very sharp. I can have certain parts almost out of focus. And just play with that a lot more. I think it adds a lot more to the realism and actually how our eyes work. Still working around this glove here. Again, since that's more towards us, I want to push that forward. So all of my tones surrounding that are going to be quite a bit darker than the glove itself. Most of these tones that I have in there at the moment are probably 60% there. The ones in the jeans and the boots. Once I have the entire image blocked in, I'll come back and refine things and make any contrast adjustments. Especially with so much going on in this stencil and in this piece, just want to block in those basic forms at the moment. Slowly but surely we're getting there. Taking advantage of every angle of that mag. Flat on its side. More straight for those tight edges and details along that glove line and in these folds. Working off the top of the shoulder here. Bringing some of those small folds in the jacket down. So many awesome little details in this one. I love tattooing fabric too. The little folds and cast shadows. Again, it's important to know how that form and that light works, how it informs our eye, and how that fabric works and how it drapes over the body, which is going to show where it folds at. Yeah, you got a reference in front of you, but if things were to wipe off or you need to make changes on the fly, it's good to understand how these things work and have a basic understanding of it at the very least. Getting the bottom of this jacket sleeve. Coming around the back of that calf. And that's leading to that Michael Myers portrait. Y'all be sure to check out that video. It's Michael Myers and a Dr. Loomis. I mashed about 4 different photos together to create a really unique image and piece. It's an awesome video. Go more into the smooth shading. Get to see me use some bigger mags in that one. So y'all be sure to check that one out. These little details in that sleeve, it's so small and minute. It's something easy to kind of forget about and not really pay that too much attention to. But again, that's one of those things when you pay attention to those special little details. Those little things are what make an image so much more realistic. Working on the bottom of this glove. We're going to finish getting the rest of that area blocked in. There's little spots in this sleeve. Still working with that medium gray tone, blocking everything in, getting it right where we want it. Appreciate everybody for watching. Anything you want to learn or know more of, make sure you let us know. If you're interested in one-on-one mentorships, any of our communities, or any of our resources, be sure to check those out. Everything you need.